first heard of Colonel Jim Channon back in the mid-1980s. The talk around the INSCOM was of the 1st Earth Battalion and Colonel Channon. It was a legend in his time back then, very famous. I lost track of him after I left INSCOM in the late 80s, early 90s. And a couple things about him. I think you've all probably heard of the movie, so I won't go into that. But he was a grunt. He's the only person I've ever known who was assigned to 5 different infantry platoons. Now, for some that may be a good thing, but for some that may be a lot of infantry misery. But it's a great honor to be able to introduce Colonel Channon tonight. Colonel Channon?
The sound of legend. Go planet. More mythology. Dare to think the unthinkable. Are you ready for that? You are the ones who went beyond space and time. And nobody really knows. Fools! You must have a phantom image too. The people don't know what to think. They're so blasted distracted out there with trivia. You must give them something for their hearts. And I must have a tortilla, I think, because I'm talking like that. You never know who's coming through when you're the phantom. So, we're going to deal with stories. Stories about what could happen if we believed the stories. If you believe the conspiracy, you will be living a constipated life on your own fears. People need a story to follow. And you are ready for your legend. You have done your work. The scores are good. The evidence is that you have gone beyond space and time and you can actually know anything. Doesn't mean it doesn't take practice. But you have earned the belt, the black belt. Only problem is, very few people know it. Now, you don't have to wear crazy costumes, run about hollering at each other and doing Jody cadence down the hallway, you know. But there must be a story of the secret things that you have done. Those successes that could be the beef of legend. And I? Who am I? Well, I'm the father of stories, of proto-mythologies. I'm the teller of tales. I'm the person who doesn't believe truth is worth a damn, especially if it just keeps you stuck in the same old place. This planet is so pregnant for a shift. Can you feel it? And who will lead? Well, I believe the armies of the world will lead. And that's why, after creating the 1st Earth Battalion and denying the right to use it by the movie company, I upgraded to the New Earth Army. and I was no longer the oldest lieutenant colonel in service. I became a 7-star general because I was writing this story. And I want to write the story with you in it. I've just spent a week with mystical artists, and they are perfect radars for what's coming. And what's coming, in bits and pieces you've heard about today, everything is coming. Multiple universes is nothing. Nothing. Many new things are coming, and there are a lot of people not ready for it. We must help them over the bridge. If they knew what you could do and what you have done, non-violently, slipping through space and time, jumping through the silver lining, they would be very, very empowered. If they knew what those visionary artists I met last week were up to, they, for example, are making pictures of the next world, much as the people in the Bauhaus made pictures of the modern world. But enough of this gab, because I am from the Illusion Islands. I have 4 rose-colored glasses, and I can find the silver lining in anything, including you. And that will be part of our job while we're together. Hi, I'm Jim. I work for the planet. Said that in 1978. Didn't go over that well then. And I actually have done, I've had a life that just put me everywhere. And recently I went into the cockpit on Spaceship Earth to see where we were going, and there was nobody in there. There was a pair of Bucky Fuller's old glasses that were broken, and a teapot from Teilhard de Chardin's time. But we're not really looking out for the future very well, are we? Our big boys and big centers everywhere are proving their worth every day and their lack of it. We fortunately have an internet system which is 10 times better than any representative government ever could hope to be, and it works for the whole world. And we are arguably a planet, a unified planet. I went to a show last night, and there were 4 white Aussie boys in what is arguably Indian country singing Motown music. Do you need any more proof that we're one world than that? Maybe it's in my little town where we have a Hawaiian building with a Japanese sushi rock store in it eating sushi with Italian sauce. Yeah. And a spa run by a French guy with a Burmese assistant. It's down at the end of the road, and we have no traffic light. But we have a pub crawl every Friday night. 4 bands, and no traffic light. It's a global village, and more of them are coming. And they're all going to have micropolitan centers in them, and you aren't going to have to drive very far to have culture. But all of that's part of our green stream move to the country. Yeah, our world is really quite close to being there. We just got to melt down some of the folks who actually made last century a great century. If it hadn't been for a little good war and a lot of manufacturing, we never would have connected the planet, actually. I'd like to just take a moment and salute those blue-collar guys for having connected the planet. Except now we have to persuade them to put their toys away and quit making such a mess with all the big things. Anyway, I stumbled into an opportunity in the Army that is now known as the 1st Earth Battalion. And I'd like to tell you that story. Looks like the light's here, so I'll move the chair into it. So I don't want to get sucked up the toilet here. Yeah, in 1978, the American Army was in a bit of a snit. You know, they were back in Vietnam for long enough to lick their wounds, but they really hadn't licked their psyche. And they really hadn't made the shift to get ready for what was coming next. There were 4 really brilliant generals in the Army. And for a lot of people in the world, that's a, oxymoron. But these guys were Renaissance men. And they saw the handwriting on the wall. Yeah, the Russians were building up an army that would outman them and outgun us in every department, pretty much. And our soldiers were not ready for that. Now, where's the bog? Where's the holding place in most organizations when something like that happens? It's usually the middle management guys that need the kick in the butt. Well, they didn't quite know how to do it. And that's where I stumbled on the picture, because I had a job in California, and I had not been exposed to the New Age and even hippies and Buddhist energy and all the things that the curtain was just rising for America. It was the time of Pop-Tarts, and peanuts were sort of over, and they were looking at everything. You say New Age, it wasn't so new. There's nothing new about Buddhism or energy or meditation or shiatsu. But that was the window that opened up. And I decided to spend my weekends on a recon mission, exposing my little body to all those good things. Now, it just turned out at the same time, the Army started a think tank, Task Force Delta, and the purpose of that was to take this soldier that was about to step on the nuclear battlefield, the dirty battlefield, in teams of soldiers that were about to do that, and basically give them some magic. Because just based on the weapons they had and the moxie they had, they were not going to make it. But what was it? What would it take to push us over the line to do that? I'm flying to this think tank, which I'm really happy to be part of. And in the middle of the air, I get an incoming, the 1st Earth Battalion. Boom, a popper, one of those flash drive things. Aww. I didn't know what it meant, but when I got to the conference, people started to do their routine, what used to be a PowerPoint presentation, but with plastic slides. It's pretty much the part where you face their butt while they read the slide. It's real exciting. It's probably the bane of all organizations right now. Nevertheless, I realized that what I had learned was way more about energy, way more about a state of being than it was a state of doing or a state of having or a state of knowing. And I just said, I cannot honestly represent what I know now in a talking head presentation. So I got this flash that I would invite them all to the officers' club on Wednesday night and initiate them into this mythical battalion which had just come to me. Now, I had a rudimentary understanding of sacred ceremony and whatnot. So on Wednesday night, in they tromp, 80 generals, colonels, and scientists. And they have to take off their shoes to come in the room. And I got the lights out, and I got all the plastic trees in the building in a circle, and a little candle and a dollar bill. And after they get into the circle, I say, tonight, to honor the earth, we're going to do the mantra E. Please take a breath, and with me, E, intone an E. Knowing that a collective sound like that is a unifying energy effect, and everybody should feel a little more oneness after that. Well, they were still sort of, didn't know whether to snicker or quite what to do, but they forgot to take a breath. And the E came out and burbled and garbled and whatnot. And fortunately, I have enough soldier in me to sort of dress them down and say, that is not the game. Get it together. And take a breath, and let's do this thing. In which case, they sounded like a beautiful male chorus all of a sudden. And the room took on that magic space. Unified, tingling space. If you breathe now, you can probably feel it. Don't breathe too fast. Don't leave your soul behind now. And you can feel that. Then, Colonel Mike Malone, really neat guy, comes up and does a karate kata. A kata is like a dance. It's like a warrior dance. So, okay, well, this is about boys stuff now. So everybody was all right with that. Then I began to talk about the principles on the dollar bill, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 25 minutes went by. I said, thank you, gentlemen, for your attention. Make of this whatever you will. I'll see you in the morning in the conference center. And they shuffled out. Well, the next morning, I get over there, I'm a little bit late. And the door's closed, and and this is like a Hollywood movie, there's MPs everywhere. And there was a guy there, and he said, Colonel Channon, you're not allowed to go in here. And I could hear the I thought, oh shit, I have gone too far now. I have done that before. I thought, holy shit. All of a sudden, doors open up. Colonel Channon, report. I know these sounds. So I move in there, and I come to attention in front of the group. And they call the group to attention. What are they going to say? What? Am I being drummed out? I didn't hear the drum yet. And Colonel Malone read formal military orders making me the commander of the 1st Earth Battalion to go forward in time and space and dare to think the unthinkable. I was very moved, and also didn't know quite what to make of it, because the orders were completely formal orders, but it was a whole mystical ceremony that happened. Anyway, very shortly after that, at the following meetings, I brought back a hand-illustrated manual, which is the one that's in the back of the room, which is, I think, sold out unless you want to order one, but it was 125 one-page disciplines on human excellence, human performance, how to operate under pressure, taken from football team technology, all kinds of technology. The generals saw that, and they immediately printed 350 copies, and they sent it to all the creative officers they knew. And they do. They keep book on the ones that know how to get out of the box. And before you know it, they were showing it to others, and they would go ceremoniously to the copy machine at the end of the day and crank off another one. And because it was kind of not legal, everybody wanted one. That's just how that works. So a little time went on, but fundamentally, I'm still that guy. I have 5 websites that still talk to the armies of the world about their potential to serve the planet. Because in that field manual, the value system was all at the planetary level. There was no place for combat, per se. There was only place for peacemaking and all those things that would bring people to a higher state of development and cooperation. It was a value system. And at the time, it seemed like, what? It's like a lot of corporate world is right now. It's pretty generic. And the spirit just, it won't put up with that for so long, We just need some sacred stuff in our lives. And so off that whole thing went. Well, I've been doing the work, collecting intelligence on new technologies and pumping it out and all of that, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I get a screenplay from BBC, and I read it. It says, "Men Who Stare at Goats" on the outside, and I was horrified. Because if they made this movie, it would be an insult to the 500 renegades that had already risked their careers to do all the things the men in this room, have done and more. And I really had a hard time with it. But after thinking about it, I said, the chances of me getting this story out to the public in the modern world of media, which is, a million emails a minute or something like that. It's such a hairball. And this film, it's like the fool in the tarot deck, which is the highest card in the tarot, I'm told. The fool knows how to walk into the court, when some real pregnant thing's about to happen, drop all of the food on the floor, and then during the mayhem, everybody takes a huge out breath, laughs a lot, and all of a sudden they can proceed from there. And what little Johnny Ronson, the writer of this crazy book, had done by having John Alexander and I have he's looked at it really carefully. About 10% of it was actually pure truth, and the rest of it was what would make a good movie, what would make a great black comedy, what would make a good satire, and, that stuff that sells, plus a ton of sort of yellow journalism. But bottom line was, if any of this information about a paranormal army that served the planet was ever to see the light of day, this movie would have enough, ballast to break through the wall. The mythology about the military, you know what it is. It's like men who run around shouting at each other all the time. Almost all the movies have been made about basic training. So I took a big gulp and figured out I could. With one guy, I knew I was more nimble than a corporation. So I decided that the Jedi warrior what he would do is he'd meet these guys in the square with his stick, And so I said, okay, I'll release you from all of this. I don't want any money, but I do want to be consulted on the film. Well, I'm not going to drag this out much longer, but what I managed to get was a tribute at the end of the film for all the people that had worked on this, and it goes by pretty fast, but it was there. I managed to rewrite the name. They wouldn't use the 1st Earth Battalion because the lawyers wouldn't let them. I said, well, let me write that, and I created the New Earth Army from Eckhart Tolle's work. Then proceeded to get the 6 websites that belong to that. And then we talked them into a featurette. And if you see the movie on a DVD, do look for the part, special feature, that says The Real Men Who Stared at Goats. And you'll find Lynn and I and John and Glenn there. And I think 14 minutes really clarifies what we thought we were doing and how unified that story really is. And the rest of the movie was not a disaster because it just washed a huge wave over the old perceptions of what military is. I mean, it made a mess of everything. And in the middle of that mess, there were 37 memes, M-E-M-E. Do you know that word? It's like a slug line, a call to action, that were different than the old story. They thought armies only, shot people and broke things. Well, after this movie, they didn't think that anymore. And they realized that there was a whole new way to manage using armies for other purposes. And that the essence of peacemaking should be peaceful, And forever, all the kids between 12 years old and 30 years old, who also saw Captain Planet that I had something to do with, have a different idea about what can happen with armies and with the world. And so, interesting how the fool, and Ronson to this day, has more sparkly eyes than anyone. And still plays around with, well, it could be this, it could be that. Anyway, let me thank those of you in the audience who were behind this work in the Army for what you did in the name of the planet and in the name of non-lethal warfare. You know who you are. There are probably more of you in this room than in any room I could be in right now. And I'm really proud to have been your mythological leader. So if you all will give these people a hand right now, I would appreciate that. Yeah, so what about you guys? What can we do with your legend? I'm very simply going to make an offer that as the New Earth Army collects its mythical units, that some of you that are really interested in it, get together and be part of that. Have a mythical phantom self, which allows you to play with the world, attract the kind of attention you should be getting, make people aware of the peaceful qualities of what you do and the impact of it. But you have to have an arm out there in the world. You have to have a brand. And so that will be definitely something we will talk about. What's my timing right now? Have I burned up 20 minutes yet? No? Okay, good. Well, I'll tell you a little bit more about me then. When I was 6 years old, my father flew to Greece to work with the Greek mission. There was a guerrilla war over there. And I got 38 shots in my arm. I remember that in about 2 weeks. Got on a destroyer escort, which took 23 days to get to Greece. When I got there, the next morning, I got in an armored car with English soldiers in it and went to school and studied French from an Irish woman. Now, a guy ought to get a clue that he might be working for the planet if something like that, if you start like that. In college, I donned my chameleon wings, by going from the fine art department where I was this kind of, like sort of neat guy, to the track field for track, to the journalism department where I had to put the blue Oxford shirt cloth on again because I was the editorial cartoonist for the paper, over to the grill where I was the social chairman of the Dancingist fraternity on the campus, and finally into the ROTC department where, I had to really slick it down. So border crossing is not a problem for me, Putting on a new face is not a problem for me. And putting on a new face is a little bit about what the subject at hand is. In the Army, I was fortunate enough to take some of my artistic skills and remember drawing the first 80 square miles of the National Training Center, which was laser-guided golf course, basically, where big units came in and fought intelligent enemies and got, force-on-force real scores. And then, by the way, they were allowed to be grown-ups and go out, light a fire, sit in the desert, and talk about it. Like, hey, Ralph, when next time you're on my right flank, will you let me know when you're going to slow down? I mean, you opened my butt way up. That's how they fixed kind of that's real stuff. That's like a basketball team talking about, when you're on my right, let me know. Just, if you want the pass, give me the sign, And put the first weapon systems on dune buggies and beat $3 million XM1 tanks with a $3,500 dune buggy. Stood up, I remember, in front of 1,000 field-grade officers at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and spray painted in psychedelic cans all across the back of the room while Pink Floyd was playing "We Don't Want No Education." They loved it. And when I was done, I just came out and I said, sometimes energy is just way more important than content. Talking head bastards, stood up in front of 110 general officers at one point because a 4-star general gave me his 4 stars. He said, I want you to come get these guys out of the box, Channon. And I said, and he said, what do you need? I said, those little stars. That'll be fine. And so I rigged up a 21st century space age stage. I had an Apple light tablet, which wasn't even known, that flickered on the screen, and a Burdick desk group from Herman Miller. And I made fun of the generals because they didn't have any mustaches, you know, and they were way out of date. And at the same time, told them in 1981 that they were about to face a terrorist threat. 1981. So I'm bragging a little bit here, but I guess the point of all this is that when the need is real, you're not going to can the person who stands up and has the courage to say so. You can only play in the grazing department for so long. And then, by the way, it is your presentation power that it now enables you then to get in the game for everybody and get above that mediocre level of communication that goes, how are you? How are you? Fine. That's fine. Get real, people. You guys are in such a real place right now. And I just feel like I'm going to make Dave Letterman look like a kid. That's not a flip card, that's a flip card. And that's not a pointer, this is a pointer, by there. Remember Crocodile Dundee? My guy. All right, how do we become real to the world, given what we do? Well, why not try out a proto-mythology? What shall we call you? What is your name? What mythically would excite people? In the case of the 1st Earth Battalion, we had some positive outcomes. What are your positive outcomes? Ours were global unity, biorecovery, and web governance. And they've changed a little over the years, and there's probably another 8 or 9. But given what you do, how can you stand up? Well, how high can you get on this ladder? And then what you need in a tangible is a tangible culture, even though it's not a living, breathing culture, it's a tangible culture. It includes, hey, an initiation ceremony, remember that part? A field manual, remember that part? A flag, logos and t-shirts, and some gear, you know, some cool hats and bags and stuff. And, you know, willingness to play out the role at the level you want to play it out, not at the level that's dictated by the system. When you have meetings like this, you do your daytime thing, like this, information exchange, but at night, you know, it's real tribal and really fun. So that's pretty much the content of it. I want to practice this for just a second. If I point at the big, no, I don't even get a shadow. Whatever. Does it work okay to choose the one you want? Thank you. Too small. This one. Okay? Okay. Yep. All right. Beyond time and space, or beyond space and time, what is your legend? Well, we played around, a couple of us, just to get a little bit into deep ops. Now that has a kind of, that's tough stuff, right? Deep ops. Of course, it's like black ops, but black ops isn't always bad unless it's paid for with black money. There's a lovely man in the room who in 1951 had a squad that did PK and remote viewing and other things. He's a lovely guy. He's got his own machine driving around here in a yellow shirt. Who is that? Tell me your name. Maybe he's not here at the moment. The group I left last week was Alchemize. Roger! Cool. Alchemize. That's what the young artists call themselves. And of course, we played around a little bit with IRVA, and then Minerva, who is the goddess of wisdom. Hey, not too bad, right? And then the Min part would be Meta-Intelligence Network, or Meta-Intelligence Nexus. And we, just to remind you, at the neweartharmy.com, and that's the thing you should go to first if you've never seen any of this stuff. But there are 6 other websites. Give you an idea, and I'm going to put these boards back up tomorrow, and come up with your pens and just write on them. Use these all as collection devices. I'd like to say something about situational awareness, because I believe that the current concept for intelligence is that you have a big knowledge base. Well, there are a lot of people with a big knowledge base who have crappy taxonomy, and they don't even know how to get the knowledge that they can use, and they can't present it once they get it. So I had offered that the Army's interest in having situational intelligence be a primary way to get somebody ready to meet an unexpected situation is a good one. And Frank Burns, who helped start the Delta Force, had a model called Scan, Focus, and Act. And I really want to focus today just on the scanning part. And the scanning part, in my experience, just to give you some starters, is, well, I could say, can you imagine I walked about 320 days straight into bad guy territory in Vietnam. That's a situation where they have a village, it's camouflaged, they're all dug in, and you go you first ride in on noisy helicopters, and then you tromp into their area thinking that they're not going to shoot you, that they're so scared. Well, this is madness. First day I lost a guy, and so did most of the other platoons to snipers and things, and we realized we weren't any better. We were like a bunch of redcoats walking into the colonials, except we'd all had 2 flagons of beer. We were so full of ourselves. Well, the second day we got real stealthy. So for the next 319 days, we were the quietest thing walking around in the jungle. And when you get quiet, and you know somebody's waiting for you, potentially, every psychic sense in your body tries to come out of your body and reach its way into the forest. Because we could only see 20 to 50 feet sometimes ahead of us. And all it took was to walk into a killing zone. They're in a hole this deep. They're aiming. They're only 5 inches above the ground. They've got T&E mechanisms and tripods and bipods and whatnot. The first volley from them is going to wound half the people in a rifle platoon. That's like 25 people. And then guess what happens? What do the other 25 do? Run over to their buddies. So there's no fire being returned. It's madness. So the trick was, don't ever get to the killing zone. You must find out before the killing zone what's there. Well, the first thing that happened to us is we learned what hunters had known for centuries, except there are not many hunters anymore in the American Army. We learned to hear like a truck at 2 miles and tell whether it was coming toward you or away from you. You could hear, a tin can top open at 200 meters. What we learned to see was patterns, pattern recognition, little things. But what we did, most of all, was, here in the ganglia part of the solar plexus is, I think, the greatest set of nerve bundles there are. This is the place where the bell always goes off first, like, watch out, something coming. And with that little alert, eventually, I began to see, just like a night vision device, I could see little black dots with little green movement, like little worms in them at 200 meters from people who were out there moving around. We didn't have a word for remote viewing then, so we didn't know what to do, but what we learned to do real fast was when anybody went off with any of that information, we simply stopped, got down, and sent 2 people forward to find out what was going on. And as a result, we didn't lose a single person for the next 319 days. Because they either walked away, they ran away, or we sent in some artillery, but we didn't walk into the killing zone. Now, that just says to me, since I've been in that situation, that we probably have a dozen abilities in the scanning department that we could call on if we knew what they were. And many of them are the same kind of sense that you all know is free to us all in the remote viewing business. But, well, I had a guy from Iraq write me the other day an email, and he said, I just want to confirm some of the things you're up to. I'm on convoy duty. I go through these towns every day, every other day, and I've been doing that for a long time. I know where the danger zones are mostly. And the other day, I had a picture that come to me, a flash, just of a curb, and I knew where that curb was. I know what town that was in. And when we were driving toward the town, I had my belly go off, you know, duh. And so when we got to town, I made sure the convoy stopped on the other side of the road and quite a far away. And sure enough, the whole curb came apart and killed, I don't know, 60, 70 people. What they are also using in Iraq and Afghanistan to add to that is pattern recognition, because the bombs all have to get loaded into something. And so mostly it's rocks or the facsimile of rocks. So when you see a rock that looks like it's made with fresh concrete, bell goes off. So now they're beginning to add perception to the game. When I worked in East Berlin, I was on a patrol mission that was set up after World War II, wherein cars from the Western Zone would go through Berlin and into East Germany, and they were early warning systems. And the Russians sent their cars through West Germany. It was so that neither side would have the opportunity to build up and get each other. What I was limited to is what I could see. I could not use a camera. I couldn't draw anything live. If we ever got caught with any overt intelligence, you know, the ball would go up. So I had to learn to memorize, visualize, sight in, see, record, find ways to remember the recording. Oh, that looks a little bit like a Mickey Mouse. The one Mickey Mouse on the left and 2 boxes of something. So that 4 hours later, I could redraw anything I had seen. And that includes brand new armored vehicles that nobody had ever seen before, down to the rivet, in 3D. Well, because I'd studied art, I could draw in 3D. If you can't draw in 3D, it's just like having a crappy screen. So you should be doing that, for sure. And it'll test your patience for about 2 weeks, and then you'll figure it out. You'll get it. The grid will come into your head. And it'll also enable you to record beautifully by having that present in your mind. And we recorded things like, I recorded 37 buildings and I had every window count. And we say, why would you want to count the windows in a building? Well, because the Soviet order of battle, if you could count the number of offices, you could count the number of staff people, you knew whether it was a division headquarters or a corps headquarters or an army headquarters. And if you knew the height of the antennas, you could tell how far they transmitted, so you'd know who they reported to. And if they reported to a next highest headquarters, which was 150 miles away, then that was a confirmation. Finally, we did nothing but record license plates. And the license plates corresponded. We could tell where everybody was going based on which license plates they'd been issued. So we broke the whole order of battle of the Soviet Army down with those 3 simple pieces of information. A slight diversion, but simply put, you know, what are you doing to increase your scanning power? How many other psychic or sensory skills do you have? You should be working on a really good bunch of them, a really good bunch. Then in the focusing department, things like sorting, pattern recognition are really, really important things. And then your output is not so critical in this case, but worth thinking about as a way to build your general intelligence. I can tell we're going to recycle that last song because we're going to need that at the end. I'm going a little slow, but I can hear the hush out there, so I'm trusting in it. Here's something. What do you do to build your consciousness? And I'm just messing with the chart here. What are you doing to build your consciousness? I would just share with you that every week, at least twice a week, I'll go into my own gymnasium, whatever that is. It's just my bedroom, actually. And I will shake out, do some breathing. I will do some movement. And start to feel energy coming from different places. Sing a little bit. Might put the music on. Play, dance. And sing wildly, like sing nonsense opera. Nonsense opera. You can just sing what you think, you know. And things will come through. Things will channel in that situation. And then I'll make notes about those things. And then within 2 hours, I'll be lying down. And I will be able to assemble another whole like layer of information. The stuff that comes at 3 in the morning, you know, I will stop, get up, sit in bed, make notes, write down on my computer a paragraph, and then by 7 o'clock, I'll have that paragraph into a paper, and the paper will go on the website by 8. And I know that stuff's clean. And when I watched videos of me doing what I'm doing here, I will always discover things that I say that I had no right to be able to say. It came from somewhere else. I'm trusting that's true too. Although I'm getting closer enough to my higher self now where there's not as much BS in the system. Anyway, I want you to look at these tomorrow and notice and add a few things that you can. Notice how it is you can build your overall consciousness. Finally, I think something's afoot in the local galaxy. Last week, when I was with these artist guys, just out of the blue, I said, how many of you people think you were on Sirius at some lifetime? 17 people raised their hand without a question. How many from Arcturus? It was only 3 from Arcturus. That's where I think I've spent some time, and maybe still I am. How about Orion? Well, altogether, 60 out of the 82 people in the room, without any question, knew they had spent a previous lifetime, they think, in one of these 5 places. And I have a feeling we're just about to graduate to a place as a unified planet where we can be part of the Galactic Federation. So we're now getting high-grade input from all the neighbors who have our best interests in mind, but it didn't keep them, by the way, from having their memory shut off. They have to play the same game we're playing. No cheating. But the veil is lifting, and the veil is lifting for everybody on not only where they might have lived before, but if, for example, what I know about the Pleiades, these people, they're healers and they're full of heart. Generally speaking, I can tell them they're the chubby-faced, Dutch-looking people. Orion, they're the code breakers that activate other people. They have certain ways to pop the DNA. And I think we have all kinds of, software in the system just waiting to go into action when the vibration frequency pattern comes up just right. This is all provisional, by the way, but hear me out. Sirius, the folks are pretty serious from Sirius, and that's a funny one. Arcturus, they're spiritual folks who believe that pushing people around is the way you wake them up. Like they would never work with an all-light world. That wouldn't work. Everybody'd be, pancake. They'd be fat boys and never wake up to anything. So I'm a nudge, and that's why I do all my crazy shit. And Andromeda is actually another galaxy, and those people have a much further span of time that they have participated. So you can't get them too excited about things in a moment. Now, I'm just revealing certain preliminary characteristics. Now, what I imagine is likely as not is that all these people are conspiring and convening here at a time when we're about to go through the hoop. And I want to know what they're up to. Not for me. The people of planet Earth deserve to know if they have neighbors that are going to give them a hand. We've overextended ourselves, you know that. We have gobbled up more of this planet than we will. It's not going to serve us. We're going to need some help. And we are going to have to get into action pretty soon. Some of us actually live on totally sustainable pieces of land. So if you've been promising yourself you're going to do that, but you haven't, get your shit together. So the game is, if you're willing, I have some essential elements of information about how to track these folks, why they're here, if they know they're here, and if there is anything that we should prepare our population for, like why wouldn't we build a starport pretty soon? I mean, why shouldn't we indicate that we're ready for them before they even know whether we're going to be hostile or not? And if they watch most of our behavior, they have a right to think we're pretty hostile. And most people think that people from other planets, you know, their last memory of what they were, some fly from Venus, you know, with 87 teeth and scum rolling down its mouth. You know, we have some pretty bad stereotypes of people who may have lived a lot longer than we have. Anyway, that is kind of the big question whether you guys want to play. And if you want to play in this game, I'll be glad at the New Earth Army to take in little bits of intelligence, and we can carry those under whatever phantom name that you guys want to have, so that you can protect your professional identity in any way you like. So that's my best idea for the month. I think you guys are mature. I think you've come through the hoop. I think it was perfect evidence today with 4 elders up here who pretty well agreed after quite a long time on how this all works. And they really knew what they were talking about, and they really give a damn about you all, and they're really glad the new folks came this time. We were waiting for you. And I think this organization is going to go places, and I'm really glad to be part of it. Go Planet! Music! Oh, sure. Questions? Is that the same drill where they have to come to the microphone?
You have to come to the microphone to ask the questions, please.
Okay.
We'll take about 10 minutes for questions.
Ooh, the trance is good. I can't see your face, though.
Jim, Eugene, you didn't mention Pleiades.
I did. Maybe not in the right order, but they're definitely there. I'm not sure I can spell it, but thank you.
Would you expand a little bit on web governance?
Yes. Back when we decided, when the first Constitution was engineered, that we wanted to put a representative democracy into action, the social invention that was created was a Congress. And I think part of that was taken from the American Indians, and I'm not sure of all the history. But the general notion was people who lived out in the rural areas couldn't possibly get information they needed to make an intelligent decision about anything on behalf of the whole. So they nominally had representatives go to the Congress on their behalf, check back in with them periodically, less periodically all the time, and vote for them in that. It's like the communists who said they needed a dictatorship of the republic in order to all be free. Well, guess what? Once you build big buildings and put people in them and let them print money, it's over. Thomas Jefferson said the government should have reinvented itself every generation or every 17 years. Well, 270 years later, it's never happened. But the web gives you the information you need in any subject that you can Google from wherever you are, from anywhere on the planet, allows you to buy it, have it shipped to your door within days, and that includes make comments to your representatives using any number of different agencies that are collecting appeals. That you don't have to carry the census form around anymore. It's on the web, and you can just click a button. So that's just essentially, that's the main part of it. And plus the fact that people are interconnected, and the globe is interconnected. We all do the same fashions pretty much, the same music, the same food, the same sauces, the same sports, the same movie stars, the same, you know. It's one unified cultural planet run, unfortunately, by nations who are represented by the United Nations, when ideally it should be bioregions, and not represented by anybody but bioregions, with laws that apply to the terrain that exists there, that are homogeneous with that existence. And we can actually slide into that by just letting go of the governments. You know, we're going to say, please move to an appropriate bioregion and take your service job back, but we know how to govern ourselves now thanks to the web. Thanks for your question. Sir.
Thanks a lot. Very entertaining. We heard John Alexander's talk about what was true in goats, and we heard you just say about 10% of what was in the movie, in the documentary, about 10% was true. Can you just itemize that a little bit on that 10%?
I can, and I can also ask John to stand up and do it. Or let's do it together, John. Now, it doesn't mean that there wasn't information of a suggestive nature. It was pretty much 50-50. But if you're talking about actual things that have been done, executed, tested, and whatnot, and I feel John's provided a great service in letting people know exactly what was tested and what was paid for, et cetera. So John, can you whip them off for us? Yeah.
You can relay it. Just go to your website. You can discover you did that. The viewers guide yours. Your website.
Yeah, but my laptop is not in front of me today. Can we provide that for you tomorrow? We'd be happy to. We can put it somewhere right over here on one of these boards. I'd be happy to do that. And I think it won't surprise you. I mean, the things that were blatant, you know, like LSD and red ponytails and all that, that was strictly Hollywood. And yet there were many, many things that weren't. Sir?
Yeah, Jim, I don't want to throw cold water on the situation, but of recent days, CNN, I think, showed a thing, We Were Warned. There's also a book called 1 Second After. I'm talking about an EMP attack and how that would affect the web, which would virtually destroy it. Any thoughts?
Yeah, build 3 webs. At least 3 different kinds of independently networked and different levels of survivability. I think it's that precious. I think there may be plans even now for more than 3. I know there are plans for 3 now. One's a heavy data web. One's the web we have. And anybody know what the other one is? Anyway, there's network architecture out there for it, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, well, you're right, and that's not the only thing that could probably bring down the web. But the governments aren't gone yet either.
No,
It's just that informed people need to know we can move that way, and then we'll move there in a graceful way, hopefully.
I wanted to thank you for your presentation and say that we see the government as, you know, as being out of touch with the people, corrupt and incompetent, and, you know, just randomly doing whatever it feels like. And yet, even though we know what's going on, there is very little that we can do. I mean, almost as a voter, it's frustrating to see the direction and the rampant dysfunction that's taking place. You know, and it's great to have these ideas of a peaceful revolution of some kind, but you know, you stop and you think about having some kind of revolution, and you get labeled as a terrorist. So, what's your comment on that?
Yeah, well, back when we were good colonial people, you know, we didn't go anywhere else for food or water except the neighborhood. So we moved back to that situation where at least half of the food we eat, we grow, and we clean up our local water resources as we go. We essentially just sort of quietly walk away from big government, stop investing in them, stop waiting for them to do something, do it where you live, do it where you are. Offer people in Washington and New York a place to come during an emergency, and by the way, pay a farmer and his wife, who are pretty old, some money to bring their farm back, and then send your children there to help that farm get going. So we ruralize, and we do that independently. We move away more and more. Green streaming for me means you eat food as close to where it's growing as possible. So in my case, that's sometimes 50 feet. No, it's not like we don't have anything to do. What we do is localize and stop attending to them. Stop waiting for them to get better. Let them decay under their, or as Marie Antoinette might say, let them eat buildings.
Yeah, but we're in a world society. I mean, you go into the supermarket and you see produce from all over the world.
Yeah.
And yet some of it is genetically modified, and the government is not willing to label the food products that have been grown this way.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Well, history. After World War II, the leadership, I believe, felt so badly about being suckered into that war in Germany, because the rogue nation, Hitler, came up. I'm not sure he could have done anything if we hadn't gone over there. It's like China. They don't have enough boats to come, you know. So they felt so bad about how many Americans had been dispossessed of their families and their arms and legs. They said, what do we have? And what we had was manufacturing. So they put the manufacturing system to work to give everybody a washer, a dryer, a car, a portable house or a modular house, food in boxes, which is the manufacturing system, and they had no idea it was going to be so compromised over time. So the intent was really good at that point. I mean, that was pretty much all they could do. So let's not be too hard about all that. There's an awful lot really good going on in big grocery stores too. And people are avoiding doing the work themselves. It is not simple to learn how to farm. I've been doing it for 12 years now, and it's taken 12 years to get 12 people to know how to really pay attention to that. And by the way, we eat like kings now. So.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's time for one short question.
I'm short.
One of the small people, yes.
Thank you, Jim. What a beautiful presentation, and thank you for being you. What a leader you are.
Well, thank you.
My question to you is you commented about your solar plexus and your energy coming out from there. Would you comment on that just a little bit, and where it comes from? How you when you were in was it Vietnam?
Yeah.
How you were able to use your energy from the center to save your troops and help.
I think you may have misinterpreted, or I didn't clear. What happens here, it's a confluence of the nervous system. So when something like your whole body feels like something bad's about to happen, you get this little kick in the stomach. Heard of that gut feeling?
Yes.
So it's the alarm bell. It wasn't necessarily the place that sourced my awakeness. No, that was just plain being afraid.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. If anybody's interested, you can go to the firstearthbattalion.org
Yes.
and look under a viewer's guide to goats. I'll give you the information. Jim, I want to thank you for a very, very interesting presentation. I finally met somebody who sings worse than I do.